Welcome to the Master the NEC podcast, the ultimate destination for anyone passionate about the electrical trade. Whether you're a seasoned electrician, an eager apprentice, or just someone who wants to dive deep into the world of electrical work, you've come to the right place. Join your host, Paul Abernathy, a true authority in the industry with over 38 years of trade experience, as he electrifies your mind with in-depth discussions, expert tips, and valuable insights that will keep you ahead of the curve. Each episode, Paul will illuminate the complexities of the trade, decode the National Electrical Code, and share the latest industry trends, all while empowering you to take your electrical career to the next level. So, gear up, plug in, and get ready to supercharge your knowledge, because with the Master the NEC podcast, the power is in your hands. Now get ready. Here is your host, Paul Abernathy.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Master the NEC podcast, where we talk about all things electrical topics, construction, electrical driven construction. Because again, I don't want to go out of my area of expertise, but that's what we're doing here on Master the NEC podcast. Today, I've got a great episode for you. We're going to talk about, in the title, I thought about the title for this episode, and I came to the conclusion that this title is kind of a reality check for many people. And I'm positive about always wanting people to strive in their business and take their business to the next level and all those great things. And that's all great, but sometimes, and I get calls from contractors all the time that are starting in business and they're struggling and they're just not getting the clients. And again, the cost of doing business is expensive. And then they start asking me things like, well, do I get into those like Angie's Lists and all those other things? And I say, look, we need to do a quick reality check. So that's what we're going to kind of do today. So again, don't let this topic run you off. If you're in your business and you're new into the business, again, I am very positive about businesses and running our business and pushing our business forward. But today's title is When the Dream Needs a Day Job, Turning a Failed Business into a Side Hustle. Now, I'm sure many of you have probably heard the term side hustle, and side hustle typically is when you have a business or you do something on the side that supplements what your day job is, what's your 9 to 5. And there's a lot of people that their side hustle, it makes as much or more than what their day job does. But that's the side hustle. That's just extra money that adds together. So side hustles can be great for lots of people out there who do something, say electrical, and they could do a little side stuff. Side hustles can be all kinds of things to bring in some extra money. It doesn't even need to be in what you do. I mean, I know people, my brother, for example, one of my brothers, who works for a sporting goods firm, but his side hustle is that he does custom t-shirts for sporting events like softball games, baseball games, big tournaments that they have around the country, around Virginia. And he'll go to these events, set up and sell shirts with the logo on it from the event. So it's a commemorative thing that the kids and their parents and people buy and take home to remember that event they went to, right? So that's a great side hustle for him. And that's what he does. It doesn't take the place of his 9 to 5, but it's a great additional income. Now, a couple of things that we need to do here is some opening questions that we need to, the elephant in the room type of thing. So number one, at what point does a business stop being a startup phase and start becoming financial and instead it starts becoming a financial self-destruction mechanism? Okay. At some point we start a business, we push hard and we keep going. And it's in that startup phase where you hear other people and me have told you, and you'll see other financial people that do this, will say that you need to probably have 2 to 3 times an annual salary to start a business in order to be able to sustain that business through the startup phase. But again, at some point, there has to be an end to the startup phase, whether it's 6 months in it, 3 months in it, a year in, whatever your finances allow. Okay. Number 2, how do you know the difference between pushing through hard times and simply just refusing to accept reality? Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that today because, again, I can give you a real example of somebody, and I can even give you kind of an example of my son and in his business, starting up his business, his pool business, not electrical related, but again, I can kind of tell you kind of how I'm coaching him in this process so it can help you learn, because I give him advice all the time on business and how to do things, and so it may be helpful to you. And the next question is it possible that the smartest business decision you can actually make when you're trying to start a business is to simply get a full-time job and put that business on the burner, or move it from a business where you're really giving it your 9 to 5, and we all know electricians, it's never a 9 to 5, but now you move it more to a side hustle where it's evenings and weekends and, as you have available. There is a point in time where you're going to have to make those decisions. Next, the opening things to talk about today is, why do so many entrepreneurs treat the idea of getting a job like it's failure? I think that's the number one thing that, even talking with my son and talking with other people and other contractors who I've talked to and helped mentor through the years, somehow it seems like it's failure, right? If you didn't get this business started, you didn't start making a bunch of money or enough money to pay yourself a living wage, and you feel like you failed. In reality, it may not be failure. It just may be a situation in the job, the outlook, the economy, what you're doing. Maybe the demand in the area you're doing is just not ready for what you're doing. Or maybe it's oversaturation, even though you may be the best in the world. But people are fickle, right? And, it may be just a casualty of where you're at and what you're doing, or the business that you're choosing to do, okay? But when a business idea, okay, getting a full-time job, and when the entrepreneur, feels like, if I get that job and I move this idea of what I want to do for my life to a side hustle, they feel like it's a failure. The business didn't go away, right? It's just moved to the side. And you still work it. You still put in the hours. You're going to be, burning candles at both ends, but you're still there. You still have that dream, okay? And of course, is pride the biggest reason people don't that people keep pouring money into a dying business? And this is a conversation that unfortunately you have to have with some people in business. I know people that have gone for years and never made any money. I've had businesses where I poured money into it, trying to get it off the ground, and it just would not take. I've been doing this for many, many years. I didn't just start in the business of what I do yesterday. Okay, so I'm just giving you some thoughts and how I mentor other tradesmen and people that call me that are on my mentor program. All right, so with that said, we do have to think about those things, and those are the elephants in the room, and in telling you you're not a failure. Side hustle is still a business. Still got to account for that income. Still have to pay your taxes. It just moves from primary to a side because you need to be pulling in that W-2. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means that the roadmap to success is drawn out a little longer, but you're not draining everybody you love and everybody else that may be helping you's finances down while you're trying to strive for this dream that's not yet achieving what you'd like it to be. You can offset that loss by getting a job somewhere and at least getting a W-2 so you can contribute to this so that you're not just a burden on somebody else, okay? Now, there are some reality check questions that we have to think about. So if your business hasn't paid you in a year, is it really a business or just an expensive hobby? That's something that I think people are in love with saying they own a business. Now, I can tell you, as owning a business, that has never been the highlight of my career. Okay, being a master electrician, being a journeyman, those are highlights. Owning the business has never been a highlight. Okay, it's something to strive for, but it's never, because once you own the business, now you're responsible for taxes and you're responsible for the bookkeeping and receipts and all this stuff that you have to do as a business owner, and make sure you meet certain deadlines. And there's no slap on the wrist. I mean, if you don't meet certain deadlines, for example, if you owe taxes that come, if you're a corporation, say, March 15th, if you don't typically, if you're chapter S or something like that, or a C, you owe money, you owe it. Even if you file an extension, something like personal taxes, if April 15 rolls around and you were self-employed, sole proprietor, and you owe tax money, maybe you're a 1099 guy or gal, and you owe money, you still owe it. Even if you were to file an extension on your taxes to October, you still owe the money to the IRS. You still owe it. If you don't pay it, you're going to get penalized. And again, I'm not a tax consultant. I'm not giving tax advice. I'm just telling you the facts. If you still owe the money, the deadline for individuals is April 15th. You still owe it. You got to pay it. You could still file an extension, but you still got to pay the money. Okay, electronic transfer or whatever. Put the money in there. You still got to do it. Okay, so important things to realize. But at some point, the reality is, if you haven't paid yourself and you're losing money and you're sucking money from family members and other people, or you're taking loans out on cards and you're just not making any money, you're not getting clients and you're losing money. That's not why you went in business, by the way. So if you're not making any money, you have to set yourself a realistic timeline based on what you can afford to risk. Because, owning a business is a risk. But there's a lot of reward, but there's risk. Okay. So you have to understand that, and you have to remember that. Okay. So if you get, for me, I usually tell people 6 months. If you don't have a couple clients, or you're not starting to establish a foothold in 6 months, and you're very aggressive, and I'm not talking about paying for pay-per-click ads like the Angie's Lists and all those kind of, that's garbage. Okay, because everybody's getting those links and you're all fighting for price. The only one that's winning is the Angie's List and the other, whatever those other ones are that are making money off those leads. They're the only one that's winning. So I don't recommend doing that type of crap. I recommend I have a whole nother episode on things that I recommend you do as a business to get started, but that is not what I recommend you use in those services. Okay. So, but at some point, you're going to have to make the realization, is this really a business or is it just a hobby? And as hard as that may seem for some people to grab onto, sometimes hobbies are expensive and businesses you got to let go. I'm just saying. You can keep it as a hobby and hope that someday that side hustle hobby business turns into a full-fledged business down the road based on all the effort you're doing in the hobby. You get what I'm saying? Okay. So that's a reality that people have to come to. You have to set your realization, and it's a tough pill to swallow, because you got an electrical contractor, let's say, he goes out in business 6 months into it, just money is leaking out like a sieve. It's just, you have to make that decision to say, you know what? I'm not getting rid of the company. I'm just going to push it to a side hustle. I'll do weekends and evenings and whenever I can get the time, but I need to work for somebody else and make some money. That's reality. That's where we are in the world. Now, how many months of losses should someone realistically tolerate before doing this reassessment of the business? My belief is 6 to 8 months. Right about 6 months, if you do it right and use marketing on Facebook and you're putting your ads and you're running your ads and you're doing follow-ups and you're doing Nextdoor and you get your Google listing, you get your Bing listing, you get your Yelp listing, you're doing all these type of things. And you're really working it that way, not that pay for link crap. If you're really working that, if you're going out and beating the streets, you're giving out business cards, you're doing flyers, you're using, let's say, Google Earth, if you're a pool business like my son, looking for pools in the area using Google Maps, things like that, or Google Earth. and kind of, because they'll give you addresses on that, and honing in on where to go drop and make visits and really hustle. You got to work a business. That old saying, you build it and they will come, that's bullshit. That's total bullshit. And if people say, no, I've made it happen. No, you didn't. What you did is you had somebody give you a turnkey, or you had somebody says, look, if you go into business, I'll give you the business. That is not the same as starting a business from scratch and having nothing. Okay? Don't fool yourself. It's a big difference. I'm not saying it's not nice to have that bump, because it is nice. Yeah, I'd like to always in business, you like to have that bump, but let's be real. Now, if your spouse or family are the ones that are financially supporting your business, the question you really have to ask yourself, are you really running a business again, or is it just a hobby that is sucking your family dry? And there's nothing worse than destroying a family is financials. Again, we tell people all the time, politics, religion, and financial discussions are the number one things that ruin families. Okay? Financial is the worst. The worst. And so, you can't blame your family if they cut you off. You can't blame if people won't talk to you in your family, because you did it. They're not in business. You're in business. Hell, at least you should be thankful they loved you enough that they're going to contribute to the business in the hopes that you succeed. But if you redo a reassessment and it needs to be moved to a side hustle, then you'll be taking less money from family, less money from people that's financially supporting you, and you're able to work and support your family. You get what I'm saying? Don't be upset at the family or the spouse or the other people, because you know what? It's normal. They don't have the same dream as you, but they do dream for your success, right? So it's important that you evaluate that and understand that if you have to move something to a side hustle and go back, it's not a shame. It's okay. It's fine. Your business didn't go anywhere. It's just you're not dedicating the same amount of time to it because you need to work in a regular job. Now, here's the deal. When you start borrowing money from family to keep a business alive, it already has crossed the line. Now, I'll give you an example for my son. So my son's in a pool business. I'm financially supporting him in his effort to build a pool business. Y'all know the history there. I love him. I want to see him succeed. I'll do everything I can to try to help him succeed. But he's in an area where there's just not a lot of pools. It's not like you're in Texas anymore. Okay, we're in Virginia, Central Virginia. So it's feast or famine, and there's already some established pool cleaning and servicing maintenance folks. So it's going to be a tough haul for him, but I want him to succeed. I've created all kinds of tools to help him succeed. He's got to get out there and do the legwork. But 6 months comes in, middle of pool season, come June, July, if he doesn't have some established clientele that he's doing weekly, then we're going to have a serious conversation. I'm not saying get rid of the business. I'm just saying now it becomes a side hustle and you need to get a full-time job somewhere. And don't give up on your dream. It's just that right now you can't keep taking from your family. You need to be self-sufficient for your family, okay? Because he's got a child and a wife and whatnot. You get what I'm saying? So these are the real realities, if anybody out there that's listening that are dealing with that same situation. You want to help somebody succeed, but there's only so much. Pockets are only so deep. You get what I'm saying? But at the point where you're taking money from family, unless the family's the one that's funding your effort for a while, then at that point, do you really have a business? That type of scenario. Now, I guess the other reality check question, is there a point where continuing a failing business venture becomes irresponsible to your family? Yes. These are supposed to be people you love, right? So if you take money from family, yet you're losing it, then you're losing and they're losing. And why should they lose money? Why should they worked hard for that dollar and you're just taking it in a failing venture? The smartest thing you can do is step back and say, you know what? Hey, this isn't working the way I wanted it. I'm going to find a job. I'll do anything to feed my family, okay? I'll shovel crap if that feeds my family. But I'm not giving up on my dream. I'm just putting it on the side here and working it at my available time, I need to focus on making money. That doesn't mean I give up on the dream. That's so important. And I just don't want people to take away from this giving up on the dream, because you're not. Okay? You're not. I guess the next step that we logically have to talk about is the ego thing, very much driven in men than it is women. This ego thing versus reality. I guess the questions in the room are, why do entrepreneurs sometimes confuse stubbornness with determination? There's a difference. Being determined to do something and putting all of your efforts into it are so much different than doing it when you know it's a failed effort the way you're doing it and not admitting that it's time to shift gears. That's stubbornness. That is not dedication. Big difference. Next, ego versus reality check. Is quitting the wrong business actually a smart entrepreneurial move? Yes. If you're trying to do a business and it's not successful, then you cut it. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, many people know I owned a boarding kennel, grooming and boarding facility. My wife ran it. I had the electrical contracting and everything out of it, and engineering, design, assistants, and all this kind of stuff. And I traveled around the country teaching for Eaton, Cutler Hammer, and all this kind of stuff. And we started a business out of the kennel, and that business was spraying for fleas and ticks in an area where there's a lot of fleas and ticks. So we had all the equipment. We'd go out, we'd fumigate and fog a yard and do follow-up visits. And, it was a big deal because, fleas, ticks. And we were in an area in Virginia, over in the valley, over in Shenandoah Valley, that was very prone for this. We thought it was a great idea. We did some homes. They loved it. But slowly, as much as we advertised it, it just didn't generate. And we had a kennel, so we had an everyday source of customers coming in, business coming for the grooming and the boarding, people wouldn't do it. And so at some point we had to say, that's it. Cut that business, that subsidiary. It would just cut it and just get rid of it. Another example of that is I had a business years ago. You can still Google it online, Radio Pet. I was one of the original designs and in part of the development of underground pet fences and some features and technologies. And I had a partnership with a company out of Ireland, and we were doing probably overall a couple million a year back then. It was doing great. We had money in the bank. Everything was going good. It was not a side hustle. It was a legitimate division of Canine Groom Incorporated was our corporation. So it was a division of that. It was doing amazingly well. Then all of a sudden we had a disagreement. I couldn't get access to components to fix units, and they were in Ireland. We were in the U.S. And at some point, I had committed to advertising, nearly $1 million worth of advertising that I had committed to because I thought we had a partnership, a handshake deal. Well, they screwed me, and guess what? I had to eat that, and I ended up paying nearly $1 million to buy off the contracts because they wouldn't let me out of these contracts I signed, where my partner said, please go ahead and sign these. We're a partner. We handshake. Never do a handshake. Okay? It's just, especially if it's any significant amount of money, get it on paper. Today, it's so easy to have a contract with ChatGPT or anything like that. Don't do it. The handshakes don't work. It always come back to bite you in the ass. But I was young, and I did it. And anyway, it ruined it. So what was the smart move? Smart move was to close that damn business, and that's what I did. That was the smart move. I owned the trademarks. I could have gone to China and had it made and continued it in the U.S. because I had rights in the U.S. and Canada. But I did the cost analysis and looked at it and looked at the competition at the time. You had Pet Stop, Dog Watch, Pet Fence, Innotech, Invisible Fence. God, there was just loads of them. And I was like, dude, I'm competing against companies like Radio Systems Corporation that were mega giants. right? So it's just, what would be the point? I would just be hemorrhaging money at this point. So I shut it down. Very lucrative. Shut it down. Great margins in that business. Sometimes you have to make those decisions. Does that mean I'm a failure? Absolutely not. It just means I'm smart. I took the right decision. I made what I made. I lost what I lost. I licked my wounds and I kept going because as a subsidiary, I did not want it to affect the main corporation. So I had to sever it where necessary in order to keep my main corporation, which had the kennel, had the building, the property, the land, everything else, the electrical, all was wrapped up into one. I had to do that to keep it from hemorrhaging. Okay. Now, how much of an entrepreneurship is about knowing when to pivot or pause? Some of the best entrepreneurs in the world are not just because they start a business, but they understand when to pause something, move it to a side hustle, or pivot from it into something else. Okay. There's so many people out there that are listening to this podcast that work for somebody who think they know what they're talking about. Those Facebook group folks that'll say, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. You don't know shit. You really don't. So you can't wear the same shoes that somebody like me who's had 3 corporations, built businesses, sold businesses, transitioned businesses, moved businesses from one state to another. You can't relate to that. But you business owners out there can relate to it. Not some whack job out there on social media who wants to talk about what they would do if they had a business or what they do on the side. That's not a business to them. Okay? They work 9 to 5 for somebody else. Stop calling yourself a business. Now, if you have a side hustle and it was a business that you transitioned and all you did was micro-size it, you still a business. That's not the same as me working for some 9 to 5 and then somebody calls me and asks me to come wire their basement. That's not a business. Yes, it's a side hustle, but that's not a business that you put on the side. I'm hoping you can understand the difference in the two for all those haters out there who will say something smart ass about it. You're not in business. You have no idea. If you've never paid taxes, okay, if you've never paid payroll, if you've never done any of that, then you've never been in business. So don't try to lie to yourself. Okay, don't fool yourself. The best entrepreneurs in the world know how to pivot or pause or transition. Now, do social media success stories make people feel like they must grind forward even when it's not working? So that's another big thing that I see all the time is it's kind of like Facebook and people you went to school with, right? How many times have you seen something on social media from somebody you know and their life just looks so perfect, right? Every post they post is them with their kids or their family, and it's you look, you go, oh, I wish I had that life, right? You look at it and go, oh, that's what I want. But see, you don't see the behind the scenes. They only post. Nobody wants to post the negative side of life on social media. It's always the positive side, and that's fine. Reality is everybody's got demons, everybody's got troubles, everybody's got issues. They just don't want them to be the forefront. And then there's some of us who share our shit 24/7. It doesn't matter. The reality is you can't believe a damn thing you read on social media. You can't believe anything that's said there because it's combed through. It's cultured. It's not reality, right? So people that go on there, I saw a social media pic where the guy goes, I got 16 million views on this video. It went viral and I made this, and I'll show you how. And then you go look at his profile. He's got 5 followers. He's got 5. Really? That's the reality you're in. He's full of shit. And he was just doing it for clicks because that's what they do. That's how they make their money. Okay. And that's those influencer shit that y'all know how I feel about it. Okay. But let's go beyond that. We're talking about your business. So I've seen businesses that post on the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, all of them, like they're just killing it, dude. They're doing so much business, but in reality, they're leaking like a rusted out World War II ship sitting at Pearl Harbor. Okay? It's what the face they put is not the reality. You get what I'm saying? Okay. So now let's talk about the positives. Let's see, what can I offer you? Okay, I took all this time, like 29 minutes, to get to what we can talk about. So let's talk about side hustle strategies and answer some questions. First, why is turning a struggling business into a side hustle often the smartest move? Well, because you get to focus on the time that's dedicated to that side hustle as a business. In other words, if I have Sundays and Saturdays available in evenings, then I get to perfectly tailor my schedule to things that I might get from small jobs here or there into this side hustle mentality, and it allows me to be more focused because my Monday through Friday 9 to 5 grind is where I have to come in and punch the clock. But that side hustle is more manageable. Okay? Rather than having 1 or 2 jobs in a week and you're barely making it, you got an income coming in a W-2, but you got 1 or 2 jobs that you're doing as a side hustle becomes in addition to your weekly pay. That's a beautiful thing. That's exactly what a side hustle is all about. Now, if it blows up and you're like, dude, I can't handle it, I'm getting 15, 20, 30 job for you, then you can transition back to being at your full-time job. Nothing says you can't go back to doing it full-time. I think that's where they feel like reducing it to a side hustle is a failure. Next, what are the advantages of building a business while working at a stable job? Because you're making money, you're not leeching off of other people, you're able to start paying your bills, be up on time, but your side hustle has advantages, folks. Because it's still a business, guess what? You still get to write off things. Yeah. You still get to write off the gas, anything you might buy for that side hustle. You still are gathering expenses. So there's business advantages, okay, to having that side hustle. There are advantages, and you're spending less time in it, and so time is money. Money is labor, and it all translates to being much more efficient for that business. That still doesn't mean you can't take 10 minutes to send emails. It doesn't take 10 minutes to send out email flyers to a newsletter. When you're in the neighborhood, you're doing a business and you're on lunch break, you can start handing out some cards in the neighborhood. You get what I'm saying? It just causes you to focus a little better. You didn't get rid of the business. You're just refocusing. Now, how does having steady income actually help a business grow smarter? Because you're not taking from other people. You're meeting your expenses. You're working a 9 to 5. You're getting a W-2. That money goes in your savings account. That's the money that you use to help build your business. And if you buy something for your business, you're still going to get to write it off. Do you get what I'm saying? Don't give up on the dream. Just reshift your thought process. Now, why do many successful businesses start as a side hustle rather than a full-time venture? I'm going to tell you how this works. I know many contractors who work for somebody else but started a side hustle, made some connections, started doing a lot of work on the side, and the next thing you know, they were so overwhelmed that they had to make it their full-time job because they couldn't meet the demands of a side hustle. And in fact, your daytime job, Monday through Friday, started getting in the way of your side hustle, and your side hustle starts making you more money than your day job. It's time to shift. Does that mean that you never go back to a day job working for somebody? No, it's always on the table. Hey, there's no shame in my game. I'll go back to I'll do whatever it takes to feed my family, dude. If y'all haven't figured that out by now, that I'm always creating stuff, that I'm very entrepreneurial, I'll do what I got to do to feed my family. If that means I got to go to work for somebody and dig ditches or shovel dog shit, I'm going to do it if I've got to put food on my plate to feed my family. I'm not so... I can be humbled in that very easily, okay? If you have a misconception about me, you need to get over it because I do what I need to do to feed my family. Okay? Remember that. All right. What else here? Okay. Next, is it better to grow slowly with stability rather than focus growth with debt? Absolutely. Building it as a side hustle business allows you to put less money in it and be more focused on what I call guerrilla marketing techniques to grow your business while you're still pulling a paycheck and putting money in the bank and paying your obligations and bills. It doesn't do you any good to start a business and the next thing you know, your personal finances go to shit, or your family relationships or people that invest or help you the relationships go to shit. I had one time somebody, I lent them $500 for something. They bugged the shit out of me. The people were ignoring as hell. They weren't family. It was somebody I know, a friend of mine, bugged the shit out of me for $500. So much so that I was so tired to see his number pop up on the phone. Finally, I gave him that $500. I said, well, okay, well, I'm expect you to pay me back in 2 weeks. I never heard from that friend again. Now, you might say, well, I'm going to go out and try to get that $500 back. But I'm going to be honest with you. It's the best damn $500 I ever spent because that wasn't a friend. That was a moocher. And if it cost me $500 to make that bastard go away, guess what? I came out ahead because now I don't see him popping up on my phone. He's not texting me because he's running from me because he don't have the $500. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm laying down some reality for you. Hopefully you get it. All right. Now, let's talk about financial responsibility here as a business. Now, what financial signals tell you it's time to stop treating something like it's a full-time business? When you can't, when you're taking money from family and you're not, more is going out than's coming in, and your bills are still there and you're not able to pay them without reaching your hand out for somebody else to help you because you've got no savings. Unless you're doing a situation where somebody's helping you for 6 months and then they say after 6 months, if you haven't established this thing, then I can't help you. Okay. Then it's time to realize the reality. This is not a business. You keep it as a side hustle, but you get a job. J-O-B. That's the word of the day. Job. Next, should every entrepreneur set up a financial kill switch before starting a business? You know what that means, and you've heard me talk about this, the financial kill switch is, what is the situation when you're in business, you track everything, your mileage, your expenses, whatever. There's a number. Now, if you have somebody that's helping you, they're going to set that number for you. I've set this number for my son. He's getting close to reaching it, but he hasn't got to it yet. When you get to that point and you don't have a business and you don't have what I call a business, you don't have clients that are regularly under contract, in his case for pools, and it could be electrical, it could be whatever. If you don't have a reoccurring contract or something with somebody getting business coming in, then you get that financial kill switch. Now, in the past, I say just cut the cord and just go back to work somewhere. But you know, in the vein of the side hustle mentality, and I don't want people to give up on a dream. You got to determine financially when your savings are depleted or when you have enough money. Like I put $20,000 aside to this business and I've depleted it all and I don't have anything to show for it. That's your kill switch. Do you just shut the business down? Well, I wouldn't. I would just move it to a side hustle and kind of put it on cruise control while I'm working a full-time job. And then that way, if somebody happens to reach out to you and say, hey, I want you to wire this house or this basement or whatever, you can say, good, I got it on weekends. They don't care when you do it. That's your side hustle, but it's still a business. As far as they're concerned, they're paying you. It's a business. It doesn't matter what you call it. I just don't want the word side hustle to be a negative because it's not. Dude, I've done a lot of side hustles in my career and they've all, I've been happy with most of them, I can say all of them, but most of them. Next, how much savings should someone realistically have before they try a full-time with a startup? I typically say if you're going to do it on your own, that you need to have what you expect your salary to be. Let's say $25,000 a year is respectable, and people say, I can't live on that. Then you need to reevaluate your means. I'm just saying, if you work somewhere and you're making six figures or whatnot, and you're saying, I'm going into business, I can't make 25. I got to make $150,000 then. Dude, you need to stay where the hell you're at. Because if you're going to live at that lifestyle and you want to start a business, I don't want to discourage you, but I'm going to tell you, you need to have 2 to 3 times your annual salary for that business. So if you're currently making $150,000 a year, you need to have $300,000 in savings to start your business venture because you got nothing coming in. Now, the good thing about a side hustle is you keep your job and you can start that side hustle and you don't have that same amount of full startup expense. You start what I call guerrilla marketing and you move slowly into contracting. Business insurance for general liability is not expensive. Business licenses are not expensive. Some counties don't even require business licenses. Louisa County, for example, in Virginia, they don't have a business license. If you work out of your home, you got to get a permit for that. But if you work out your truck, little gray area there, right? So, and again, I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not giving tax advice. I got to make it clear because there's to be some smart ass that'll say that, but I'm not. I'm just talking reality, folks. Reality. So that's just things that you have to think about, okay, in business. So I typically say 2 times your salary is what you should have as your startup, okay? Is taking money from family to support a failing business ever justified? Yes. You got to remember it takes 2 to tango. So if the family agrees to help, that's on the concept that they want you to succeed, but it is in your best interest as it's your loved one, it's your family, to also create a kill switch. Say, look, if you're going to invest in me, I want to give this, I'm going to give this everything, but for you and me, I'm not guaranteeing you it's a success. I want it to be a success, but here's a number and we'll keep track of it. When I get to this, if it's not successful by this point, I'm going to move it to a side hustle. I'm not taking any more of your money. I will get a full-time job. I will do my own savings and fund it from here. But you're going to help me get started. Well, that takes 2 to tango. If somebody's willing to do that, like for me, I'm willing to invest in my son's success up to a certain point, but I'm also in business and I'm like, I know when to do my kill switch. And I'll be like, yeah, you can do it as a side hustle, but you need to have a full-time job because I'm not here to take care of you. You're a 28, 29-year-old man. You've got a damn baby and a wife. You got to man up, okay? Tough decisions. You get me? All right. So what's the long-term damage to a relationship when businesses collapse after family investments? Families get tore up. That's why I always say if you're going to take money from family, you need to sit down with them and be businesslike. Say, look, I'm going to borrow from you. This is the timeline. This is agreement between us. Hell, I put it on paper. Here's the agreement. This is the kill switch. If I have not made this work after this amount that you're willing to give and I'm willing to work with, and if we haven't made it by then, I'm going to get a full-time job. And that doesn't mean I still don't continue to look for a full-time job, but I'm going to start putting my efforts into starting this business. You get to that limit, you stop taking from family. Now, will the family be upset because you lost their money? They may, but if you go into it with a understanding that it could lose, but I want it to succeed so badly, we got to remember that I can't say nothing to my son if I didn't. I'm using my son as an example. I can't say nothing if I wasn't a participant in the process. You get what I'm saying? I mean, I actively give money, then I am invested into the process. It's not the same. And if he loses it and he loses his business, he's devastated. But I understand it's like the stock market. Dude, I put $100,000 in a stock market. That shit's lost $25,000 in less than 2 months. I suck at stock market. But I had to try it. And I'll never do it again. You know, everybody says, well, you just got to have the right stock guy. And Vince Delacroix put me onto a good stock guy. But before I jumped knee deep into stocks and all this kind of crap, I wanted to try it out myself using Schwab's themes and let them pick it and set it up and see how it went. And they're the experts and let it see. And I looked at their returns and percentages each year. And I'm like, okay, 10% return here, 15% return here. I went heavy into the things like the big business and big data and all this kind of shit. So I'm thinking, that's like the Cokes and the Pepsis and the Walmarts, hey, that can't fail, right? Sucks. So even when the stock market's up, my shit seems to be down. So anyway, the point is, I went into this knowingly. So some people say, well, pull out while your losses. At least you salvage the 75,000. Nah, forget that shit. I went in at 100. I'm going to let her ride. If it goes to 0, fuck it. Sorry for my language, but you know what? It is what it is. But I can tell you, I do have a plan. If I can't handle stock market volatility, not talking about my 401ks, I just don't touch that shit. You know what I'm saying? Hold on here. So I can't touch that stuff. So in reality is I'm just going to, if it ever gets back to the 100,000, I'm just going to pull it out. I'm just going to pull it out. It is what it is because I don't like stock markets. Anyway, I digress. But remember, if a family member gives you money and they're willing to help, then they're openly willing to help. Then they have to understand that that's a risk involved in the loss. You get me? So they got to understand that. So let's talk a few things about some hard truths, things that people don't want to hear. Is it possible that some ideas are just not a viable business? Absolutely. There's some businesses that I've seen out there that I'm like, how the hell did that succeed? Yet they succeeded. You watch Shark Tank, you'll look at some of that shit and go, how could that succeed? How could that make it? But yet it does. And then you can have some ideas that seem so obvious and they fail. So yeah, some ideas are just not viable business. Okay. And sometimes it's just saturated, right? Next, how do you know when your market is spoken for? Well, you got to do the research. You got to start looking at the area and see what possible, opportunities are there in that market. That's what I did with the kennel and the grooming over in Harrisonburg, Virginia. When I opened that up back in, holy crap, probably 2000, maybe 2001. Yeah, something like that. When I opened that business way back then, I went over there and went through the dog food aisles at the major grocery stores and just sat there with a clipboard. And as customers would come in buying dog food, I would just ask them questions. Do you use a boarding kennel? Do you have one in the area you like? What do you like and dislike about it? Do you get your dogs groomed? Would you pay for grooming if it was affordable in the area and done by professionals? And I did my research. Then I started looking at the saturation of the market. I started looking at how many homes are in this area. Chances are most homes have pets. How many in the area? I looked at the area. I said, okay, can this market sustain if there's already a couple grooming boarding kennels? And then I went and looked at the boarding kennels. I got a tour of the boarding kennels. They don't need to know why I was getting a tour. I just acted like I was going to board my dog there, and I wanted to see what it was like before I boarded my dog. Because I had worked for some kennels prior to this, so I had already a history of that. And so, anyway, the point was I did my research. So you have to understand whether the market is already spoken for or there's an opportunity. Now, what is the difference between this needs more time or this will never work? I think when you get to your kill switch period and you really can look back and see, look, I've only had one job or two jobs or three jobs. How did that go? Did the people love it? Did they give me Google reviews, Yelp reviews? Did they give me 5 stars? How did that go? It's sometimes you get to that kill and you have to make those harsh decisions, but you can alleviate this by saying, okay, let me just move this to a side hustle and find a job. And still continue to work your side hustle, but you need to focus on the 9 to 5, paying your bills and feeding your family. That's the key. Family's got to come first. That's also why I love people in business, tax consultants. They're such a trip. So I know a guy called me about business, and he said that his tax guy, he was new in business. He was just starting out making money as an electrical contractor. And he says, hey, Paul, my tax guy said I always have to pay myself first before I pay everybody else. I said, you need to find yourself a new tax person. He said, why? He said, well, he told me you should always pay yourself first. I'm like, well, what the hell are you paying yourself with if you're not making any money? You have to pay your burdens first. You make sure that everybody else gets paid before you pay yourself. Otherwise, you're going to go in debt. You're going to get behind. You're never going to be able to catch up. It's so easy for a tax advisor to say, well, always pay yourself first. What the shit am I going to pay myself with if my business is not making money? Think about that logic and go online and see how many tax professionals say that. Well, in business, and my dad used to say this, in business, you should always pay yourself first. With what? With what? If I did a job and I made just enough, where I can pay a bill, you pay the bill. If I pay myself first, I don't pay the bill, and then I do another job and I pay myself, and at the end of the month, I got to pay my bill, my credit card or whatever it is, and I can't pay it off. Now I've got reoccurring debt that's got interest, and I'm never going to get ahead. You pay your debt first. I have no problem with people starting their business on a credit card as long as they have the business mentality that card gets paid off every month. You do not carry a balance on a credit card ever. Ever. If you can't afford it, you don't buy it. Okay? Now, what is the difference? So next it says, why is it sometimes smarter to pause a business than destroy your financial trying to save it? Because if you go in debt, you end up chapter 11, chapter 9, you ever end up having filed bankruptcy, you'll never recover. Some people say, well, I recovered. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, and everybody that smokes crack doesn't always die, but some do. Don't be that one. You get what I'm saying? It's like online when people say, well, I've never paid income tax. Okay? I've never paid income tax. I've never done this. I've never done that. And I'm not paying my taxes. And I look at them and go, you stupid SOB. I don't like taxes like anybody else, but I pay. In fact, I pay more than my share. If they want to give me some back, that's fine. But I do not leave anything questionable. If I think I owe them something, I pay it. Not because I'm scared of the IRS. I just do what I'm supposed to do. That's the way our system works. We like it or hate it, change it, whatever. People say, well, I'm not paying my taxes. Well, first of all, you idiot, if you work for somebody, the taxes are already taken out of your pay. They're already taken out. They're withheld. So you're stupid. So at the end of the day, you got to pay your taxes. Well, there's nowhere in the Constitution that says I have to pay taxes. Shut up. We have tax laws. Things have been passed way after the Constitution, okay, that says that you owe income tax. So shut up. Stop listening to those people. They're just going to take you down the road. Secondly, I'm going to tell you something right now that's going to save yourself a world of hurt in the future. And I'm not a tax guy and I'm not giving tax advice. All of you out there that are working under the table, that you're taking cash or you're taking money or you're getting Apple Pays or Google Pays or Venmos from an employer, stop it. Because that's income. You got to pay taxes on it. If he 1099s you, make sure you're actually a 1099 employee. And you cannot be, if any employer out there tells you that you're a 1099 and they just pay you and say you're responsible for taxes, you need to pause for a second. Because unless you have a business account, checking account, unless you're a business and you do work for other people, if you only do work for that one person and they tell you where to be, what to do, what tools you have, where to go, they tell you like they would an employee, you are not a 1099. Do not fall for it because ultimately you're responsible for the taxes. Now, when you get a W-2, it comes out of your pay. You're responsible for your half. The employer is responsible for their half. If they tell you you're a 1099 and they take nothing out of your taxes and you get that 1099, you owe that as income. You're going to pay 100% of the taxes on that, and a sole proprietor is going to pay like 15.3 or whatever it is % taxes on it. If you didn't plan for that, that's going to bite you in the ass. Now, if you say, well, nobody knows what they don't know, trust me, there's a trail somewhere. So look, I advise you, do not do work under the table. Make them, if they're going to 1099, you do it, but make sure you pull out your taxes and put it away so you don't get any surprises. Just because you may be getting $1,000 and if you pull the taxes out, you may only be getting $800, that's fine. Put that $200 in a savings account or a separate account or an interest account for when it's time to pay your taxes because it'll come back to bite you in the ass. I'm just telling you because I've had to consult with contractors. This has bitten them in the ass. Now, if you work for somebody and you're working and they're paying you under the table, you either demand that you become a W-2 employee now. You cannot be a 1099 unless you meet all of the thresholds to be a 1099. Okay? And if you're in the middle of that right now, I'm not an expert. I'm not a tax consultant. But if you want to reach out to me and you have an employer that's doing that and they're treating you wrong, I don't have a problem telling you the different forms that you should fill out with the IRS. An SS-8, an 8918 or an 8919 form to establish a misclassification with the IRS. I don't mind giving you that because that's not tax advice. I'm just telling you the forms are available. You need to fight it. But that's on you. Okay, I went off a little bit of a tangent. You might think the money's nice now, but taxes are a necessary evil. They are what they are. They also establish your retirement, what you're going to get in a retirement pay as you get older, all those type of things. So you can rob Peter, but they're going to pay Paul later. I'm just saying. All right, enough of that tangent. Now, I'm going to give you some encouraging things. Moving forward, a business to a side hustle means dream is over. No, dream is still there. You're just not focusing on it as much as you would earning a living. And that's the 9 to 5. The dream is still there. It's still a business. You still get all the benefits of a business. You still get the write-off things you buy for your business and your side hustle. It's different. It's not the same as somebody that works for Johnny and just gets wiring a basement on a weekend. That's a side hustle, but that's not a business side hustle. I'm just saying, be careful. Now, can getting a steady job or stable job actually accelerate your future success? Absolutely it can, because now it means you're meeting all your obligations, you're putting money in the bank, and you get money that you can inject into that side hustle to someday become a full-time business for you. And you lose the stress because money is stressful. Not having it is worse. You know how they say when somebody is a millionaire that when they become a millionaire, you get a bunch of money, your life is miserable? They're full of shit. That is not, you don't believe what you see online, okay? Just trust me. When you get a couple $1 million and you're considered a millionaire, life is the same as it is when you were before you had money. If you're miserable as shit, doesn't matter how much money you have, you're going to be miserable as shit. If you're an asshole, you're an asshole. It doesn't matter that you got money in your wallet. If you were a great person before you got money, then you're probably going to be a great person after you get money. It's just the reality of it. Money does not turn somebody into a dick. They were born that way. Now, let me take that back. Probably not born that way, but, Anyway, I'll get some snacky comments about that. Say, Paul, so the truth is you've always been a dick? Yeah, possibly. All right, next. Is the real, why is patience often the missing ingredient in entrepreneurship? Because everybody wants to hit a home run out the park right away. Everybody wants to think their idea is the best thing since sliced bread and they win right out the box. They're not all going to be that way. Doesn't mean you have to give up on the dream. You just move it and it takes a little longer. You keep it as a side hustle. You still do everything. It's like a business. You get your licenses if you need to. You get your insurance if you need to. You do everything like a business. It's just that it's a side hustle business. It didn't go away. You still get to write off that material for that job on the weekend or Saturday or Sunday or in the evening or whatever. You still get to do the write-offs. You still get it all. It's just that during the day, you're making money at a full W-2 job. Nothing wrong with that. Very noble. Now, is it real entrepreneurial skill knowing when to adapt instead of when to grind harder? Yes. You can call yourself an entrepreneur when you can understand the signs of evolution and transition. When you understand it's time to shift from this to that, when it's time to move something to a side hustle and focus on a full-time job as a man or a provider for your family, and stop mooching on other people if that's what you're doing, unless the people are voluntarily helping you, that's fine too. But there comes a point when you get to that kill switch where you got to say, dude, I got to go to job. I got to work. I could still fund this dream, but I got to work. Now, you've heard me repeat that over and over again because that's called ballistic training. Means that I'm trying to beat in your head by being repetitious these things. And it's just my style. If somebody says, well, Paul, I listen to that. You repeat yourself all the time. You go to hell. This is how I do it. I encourage you to not listen to my podcast because you're a hater and I don't care about haters. All right. Now, let me give you this. Is the goal to prove you're an entrepreneur or to actually build something sustainable? I don't give a shit if somebody calls me an entrepreneur. That's a self-imposed title based on my effort. What I want is to build a business that people look at and say that it is sustainable and it is a valid business. An entrepreneur don't mean shit if every business he starts ends. They were just hobbies he started or she started. In order to build a business and be sustainable, You're an entrepreneur to have the drive and desire to grow it. You're a sustainable business when it gets to the point where it's stable and it's surviving and it's paying itself, it's paying you, it's meeting its expenses. You ain't got to get rich. As long as you're paying a good salary, you're paying your bills, that's sustainable. Think about it. Now, a real entrepreneur isn't someone who refuses to quit. A real entrepreneur is someone who refuses to destroy their future chasing something that isn't ready just yet to succeed. That's a quote, folks. Wind this back and take that quote, put it on a piece of paper, put it in your wallet, and look at it every now and then. You get me? All right, folks, that's all I got for this episode. Hopefully you took something away from it. If I offended anybody, I don't give a shit. If you learned something from it, you're welcome. Again, many things to take away from this podcast in business. But just because a business venture or startup doesn't succeed in your eyes doesn't mean that it's a total failure. It just means that you have to shift your momentum. And there is nothing wrong working for somebody else and getting a solid weekly check while you're still hustling your butt off on weekends and making that nice side money. You get me? All right. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. We'll catch you on the next episode of Master the NEC Podcast. And in advance, sorry for all the dirty language in there. Again, I'm trying to clean that up. All right. Peace.
Thanks for tuning into another electrifying episode of the Master the NEC Podcast. We hope you're feeling more powered up and ready to tackle the electrical world with the knowledge and confidence you need to succeed. Remember, in the electrical trade, knowledge is power, and we're here to make sure you stay plugged into the latest insights, tips, and code updates. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share the podcast with your fellow electricians and industry pros. Until next time, keep your tools sharp, your circuits clear, and your mind focused, because here at the Master the NEC Podcast, we're all about sparking your success. Stay safe, stay smart, and keep mastering the trade. From all of us here at Electrical Code Academy, thank you for all your support, and we will see you on the next amazing Master the NEC Podcast episode.